There are people living at 56 degrees C in Antarctica. And no, they're not just crazy scientists. There are entire communities that make this their daily routine. Grab your blanket because you're about to discover how someone manages to survive in the coldest place on the planet. In the next few minutes, I'll show you the absurd secrets these people use to avoid becoming human popsicles. And I guarantee one thing. After this video, you'll never complain about the freezing air conditioning at the mall again. First, let's be realistic about what 56 degree F really means. We're talking about temperatures so brutal that your breath doesn't just fog, it literally crystallizes and falls to the ground like tiny ice diamonds. Your saliva freezes before it even leaves your mouth. If you're not careful, your eyes can start to freeze. I'm not being dramatic here. This is legitimate documented science. So how do these people function? This is where things get absolutely mind-blowing. These Antarctic communities have developed survival techniques that would make Navy SEALs look like weekend campers. Let's start with clothing, because everything you think you know about staying warm is completely wrong. Forget that padded winter jacket you bought at REI. In Antarctica, they use what's called a layering system more complex than a NASA spacesuit. We're talking about count them, 7 distinct layers, each with a specific scientific purpose. The base layer, the one that touches your skin, cannot, and I cannot emphasize this enough, be cotton. Know why? Because cotton kills. Literally. When you sweat in cotton at extreme temperatures, that moisture freezes to your skin and can cause frostbite burns within minutes. Instead, they use merino wool or synthetic materials that wick moisture from your body like high-tech sponges. But here's the kicker. You can literally sweat to death in Antarctica. Sounds crazy, right? But when you work hard in all those layers, your body heats up. If that sweat isn't managed properly, it turns to ice against your skin and boom, hypothermia sets in faster than you can say frozen popsicle. Now let's talk about food, because this is where things get absolutely insane. In Antarctica, a person burns an average of 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day. It's like eating 3 Thanksgiving dinners every day just to maintain body weight. Why? Because your body is working overtime, and I mean serious overtime, just to keep your internal temperature stable. It's like running a marathon while standing still. These people eat blocks of butter like they're chocolate bars. I'm not kidding. Your fat becomes a survival tool because fat contains more than twice the calories per gram compared to carbohydrates or proteins. They literally eat spoonfuls of peanut butter for breakfast because it's calorie dense and provides sustained energy. And chocolate? Chocolate becomes a legitimate survival food because sugar provides quick energy while fat provides long-term fuel. But here's something that will surprise you. They can't eat fresh fruits or vegetables because they freeze and become inedible. So they survive on dried, canned, and frozen foods for months on end. Imagine living on MREs and canned beans for 6 straight months. Your body starts craving vitamins so intensely that some people literally dream about eating oranges. The construction methods these people use are true engineering marvels. All buildings in Antarctica are elevated off the ground. Know why? Because if you build directly on snow, the heat from the building melts the snow underneath and refreezes it, forming solid ice, creating an unstable foundation. Plus, wind-driven snow, they call it drift, can literally bury a ground-level building in less than a week. The windows aren't just double-paned, they're triple-paned with argon gas between the layers. This is more sophisticated than most luxury homes in Manhattan. And the walls? We're talking about insulation that's sometimes 60 centimeters thick. 60 centimeters. That's thicker than most people are wide. Here's something that sounds like science fiction but is 100% real. They build entire systems of underground tunnels connecting buildings. Why? Because when a blizzard hits with winds over 160 km/h and zero visibility, walking outside isn't just dangerous, it's suicide. So they create these underground highways that allow people to move between buildings safely. And the most incredible part? They turn the environment into their ally. They use snow as insulation, building snow walls around their structures that act as natural insulators. They collect ice and melt it for drinking water, creating sophisticated systems that can produce hundreds of liters per day. Some communities even build underground greenhouses where they grow fresh vegetables using geothermal heating and artificial lighting. Just imagine, fresh tomatoes growing in a greenhouse while the outside temperature is 50 degrees C. The psychological aspect is as brutal as the physical. These people live through 24 hours of darkness daily for months during the Antarctic winter, then 24 hours of daylight during summer. Their circadian rhythm isn't just disrupted, it's completely destroyed. Depression rates skyrocket, and they need to use light therapy just to maintain basic mental health. But here's the most incredible thing of all. They're not superhuman beings with special powers. They're ordinary people, scientists, researchers, support staff, who learned to master one of Earth's most hostile environments through knowledge, preparation, and sheer determination. They prove that humans can adapt to literally anything when they respect the environment and work with it, rather than against it. Imagine this scenario. You wake up in your heated bedroom, stumble to the bathroom, and splash some water on your face. Normal morning routine, right? Now imagine waking up in Antarctica. Your first thought isn't about coffee or checking your phone. It's literally, are all my body parts still attached? I'm not being dramatic here. People actually lose fingers and toes to frostbite while sleeping, even inside heated buildings, because the human body shuts down blood flow to extremities to protect vital organs when temperatures drop to life-threatening levels. Let me describe the actual sensation of 14 degrees, because most Americans have never felt anything close to this level of cold. The coldest temperature ever recorded in the continental United States was 21 degrees in Montana, and it lasted only a few hours. In Antarctica, 14 degrees is literally a Tuesday. It's not a record-breaking event. It's just another day at the office. When stepping outside at 14 degrees, the cold doesn't just hit you. It attacks you like a physical force. Within seconds, any exposed skin begins to burn. Not metaphorically burning, actually burning, like someone is holding a blowtorch to your face. Your nostrils freeze instantly because the moisture in your nose crystallizes into ice. You need to breathe through your mouth, but this creates a whole other nightmare, because the cold air hitting your lungs is like swallowing liquid nitrogen. Here's something that sounds like a horror movie but is pure science. At these temperatures, your saliva freezes before it even leaves your mouth. Think about that for a second. The liquid inside your body turns to solid ice in the time it takes to spit. Your tears, if you can produce any, freeze on your cheeks and create ice patches that can actually damage your skin. It's like your own body is turning against you. But the psychological terror is as real as the physical danger. Imagine looking outside and seeing absolutely nothing but white in every direction. No trees, no buildings, no landmarks, just a hostile, infinite wasteland that wants to kill you. The wind doesn't just blow, it screams. Antarctic winds regularly reach over 160 km/h, creating a sound like a freight train mixed with a banshee's wail that never, ever stops. It's not the gentle whisper of wind through trees. It's nature actively trying to murder you with sound alone. The isolation is beyond anything most people can comprehend. When you're in Antarctica, the nearest hospital, the nearest McDonald's, the nearest anything resembling civilization is literally thousands of kilometers away. If something goes wrong, and I mean seriously wrong, there's no 911 to call, no ambulance coming to save you. During winter months, it's physically impossible for rescue planes to reach you due to weather conditions. You're more isolated than astronauts on the International Space Station, because at least they can return home within hours in an emergency. And here's a fact that will blow your mind. In Antarctica, you can get sunburned and frostbitten at the same time. Snow reflects up to 90% of UV radiation. So while your face is literally freezing, it's also being fried by reflected sunlight. People walk around looking like raccoons because they need to wear glacier goggles constantly, but the uncovered parts of their faces turn into a patchwork of sunburn and frostbite. Sleeping becomes a survival challenge. You can't just put on pajamas and hide under a blanket. People sleep fully clothed, sometimes in multiple layers, because if the heating system fails during the night, which happens more often than you'd think, they need to be prepared to survive until morning. Some people sleep with their water bottles because if they don't, they wake up with solid blocks of ice instead of drinking water. The cold also causes strange effects on the brain. It's called cold-induced cognitive impairment, and it's terrifying. Your reasoning slows down, your judgment becomes clouded, and you start making stupid decisions that can literally kill you. People have walked out of their homes without proper clothing because the cold temporarily made them lose their minds. It's like being drunk, except instead of a hangover, you die. Here's something that seems impossible but happens regularly. Tools become useless because metal becomes so brittle in extreme cold that it shatters like glass. Imagine trying to fix something critical, and your wrench literally breaks in half because it's too cold to maintain structural integrity. Batteries drain in minutes. Electronics shut down. Even diesel fuel turns into a jelly-like substance that won't flow through engines. And the smell, or rather the complete absence of smell, is psychologically disturbing in ways you can't imagine. In extreme cold, scent molecules basically stop moving, so your sense of smell disappears almost completely. Food tastes like cardboard because taste and smell are connected. It's like living in a sensory deprivation chamber where even the most basic human experiences are stripped away. But perhaps the scariest aspect is how quickly things can go wrong. In normal climates, you might have minutes or hours to fix a problem before it becomes life-threatening. In Antarctica, you have seconds. A torn glove, a broken zipper, a malfunctioning heater. Any of these minor inconveniences becomes a potential death sentence faster than you can blink. The human body simply wasn't designed for this environment. We evolved in Africa, where the biggest climate concern was finding shade. Antarctica is literally an alien world that happens to be on our own planet, and daily survival requires fighting against millions of years of human evolution that scream, "This place will kill you." Alright, so we've established that Antarctica wants to kill you in about 17 different ways. But this is where things get fascinating. Humans have figured out how to not just survive, but actually thrive in this frozen hell. The techniques these people use are so advanced, so precisely engineered, that they make Bear Grylls look like he's playing with toys in the backyard. Let's start with the clothing system, because everything you think you know about staying warm is amateur hour compared to what these people do. The Antarctic clothing system isn't just put on a coat. It's a 7-layer engineering marvel that would make NASA jealous. Each layer has a specific scientific purpose, and getting even one layer wrong can literally mean the difference between life and death. The first layer, the base layer, touches your skin, and this is where most people would die before lunch. Cotton kills, period. I cannot emphasize this enough. Cotton absorbs moisture and holds it against your skin, and when that moisture freezes, you're basically wearing an ice shirt that will give you hypothermia faster than you can say, "bad decisions." Instead, Antarctic survivors use merino wool or synthetic materials that wick moisture from your body like high-tech sponges. This isn't your grandfather's wool sweater. This is space-age fiber technology that costs more per ounce than silver. The second layer is the insulation layer, usually down or synthetic fill that traps warm air around your body. But here's the catch. It needs to be the right kind of down. Goose down stops working when wet, so they use treated down or synthetic alternatives that maintain their insulating properties even when damp. Just the insulation layer alone can cost over $500, and that's just for your torso. The third layer is the shell layer, your armor against the wind. Antarctic wind isn't just cold, it's cold weaponized, moving at highway speeds. The shell layer needs to be windproof, waterproof, but still breathable. Because remember, you can die from sweating in Antarctica. This creates an engineering paradox. How do you make something that keeps everything out but lets body moisture escape? The answer involves microscopic pores smaller than water droplets but larger than water vapor molecules. It's basically molecular level engineering. But wait, there's more. Layers 4 through 7 include intermediate insulation layers, vapor barriers, and emergency systems. Some Antarctic workers use what's called a vapor barrier system, essentially a plastic layer that traps your body's heat and moisture in a controlled microenvironment. It sounds gross, and kind of is, but it can save your life when temperatures drop below 40 degrees Celsius. Now let's talk about extremities, because this is where things get really technical. Your hands and feet are the first things your body sacrifices to keep your core warm. Antarctic gloves aren't just gloves, they're hand-specific engineering systems. They use a liner glove, an insulation glove, and a shell glove. The liner is usually silk or merino wool, the insulation layer uses synthetic materials that don't compress, and the shell is windproof and waterproof. But here's the genius part. They're designed so you can remove the outer layers without exposing your hands to cold air for more than a few seconds. Boots are even more complex. Antarctic boots can cost over $1,000 and weigh several pounds each. They use multiple insulation systems, including reflective barriers that bounce your body heat back to your feet. The soles are designed with special compounds that stay flexible at extreme temperatures, because regular rubber becomes hard as concrete and provides no traction on ice. Food becomes survival technology. not just sustenance. These people consume fat like it's medicine, because it provides more than twice the calories per gram compared to carbs or protein. They eat pure butter, olive oil, and nuts by the handful. This isn't indulgence, it's calculated survival. Your body burns calories so fast in extreme cold that you need to constantly refuel, and fat is the most efficient fuel source available. But here's where it gets really smart. They pre-cook and freeze meals in specific portions. When you're burning 6,000 calories a day, you can't waste energy on food preparation. Everything is calculated. Calories per ounce, prep time, nutritional density. They eat foods that sound disgusting, but are survival gold. Pemmican, dried meat mixed with fat. High-calorie energy bars that taste like cardboard but provide steady energy. And protein powders mixed with butter. Hydration becomes a science project. Water freezes, obviously, but your body still needs 3 to 4 liters per day. They use thermos bottles, but more importantly, they drink warm liquids constantly. Hot tea, coffee, soup, anything that provides hydration and heat. Some people carry thermos bottles inside their jackets, using body heat to prevent the liquid from freezing. Sleep systems are military-grade survival technology. Antarctic sleeping bags are rated to temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius, but that's just the beginning. They use sleeping pad systems with R values, insulation ratings, of 8 or higher. For comparison, a standard camping pad has an R value of maybe 3. They sleep fully clothed, sometimes in multiple sleeping bags, and use tricks like putting the next day's clothes inside the sleeping bag so they're warm when they wake up. Construction technique is where human ingenuity really shines. They don't fight the environment, they use it. Snow becomes insulation. They build snow walls around structures that function as windbreaks and thermal barriers. The Inuit perfected this thousands of years ago with igloos, but modern Antarctic construction takes it to the next level. They use snow's thermal properties to create microclimates that can be 50 degrees warmer than outside air. Ventilation systems are counterintuitive, but crucial. You need fresh air exchange to prevent carbon dioxide buildup and control humidity, but every air exchange loses heat. So they use heat recovery ventilation systems that warm incoming air using heat from outgoing air. It's like having a heat exchanger for your lungs. Emergency protocols are built into everything. Everyone carries survival gear at all times: emergency shelter, fire-starting materials, emergency food, and communication devices. But the real survival technique is redundancy. Everything has a backup, and every backup has a backup. Because when you're thousands of kilometers from help, there are no second chances. The most advanced technique of all? Mental preparation. These people train their minds to stay calm in life-threatening situations because panic kills faster than cold. They practice emergency procedures until they become muscle memory. Because when your brain stops working due to cold-induced cognitive impairment, your body needs to know what to do automatically. This is where things get absolutely wild. The food situation in Antarctica isn't just about eating. It's strategic caloric warfare against hypothermia. We're talking about consuming 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day just to survive. To put this in perspective, that's like eating 3 complete Thanksgiving dinners every day, or downing 12 Big Macs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Your body becomes a calorie-burning furnace that never stops consuming fuel. But here's the mind-blowing part. You're not eating all these calories because you're hungry. You're eating them because if you don't, your body will literally start cannibalizing itself to generate heat. Your metabolism goes into overdrive, burning fat and muscle tissue like a car with a gas tank leak. People can lose 9 to 13 kilograms within weeks if they don't maintain caloric intake, and we're talking about people who are already at peak physical condition. The food itself becomes completely different from anything you'd recognize as normal eating. Fat becomes medicine. I'm not talking about a little butter on toast. I'm talking about eating blocks of butter like chocolate bars. Spoonfuls of coconut oil, handfuls of nuts, and drinks mixed with heavy cream become standard meals. Why? Because fat contains 9 calories per gram, compared to 4 calories per gram from carbs and protein. When you need maximum calories and minimum volume, fat is your best friend. Pemmican becomes a survival superfood. It's dried meat mixed with fat, perfected by Native American tribes and Arctic explorers. It looks like dog food but contains about 450 calories per 100 grams and can last years without refrigeration. Antarctic workers eat this stuff like energy bars because it provides sustained energy release and doesn't freeze like most other foods. Speaking of freezing, forget everything you know about food storage. Fresh fruits and vegetables become useless because they turn into ice blocks that can literally break your teeth. Apples become harder than hockey pucks. Lettuce turns into sheets of green ice. So the entire diet shifts to dried, canned, and specially processed foods that can survive extreme temperatures. But here's where it gets really technical. Cooking becomes a survival skill that requires engineering knowledge. Conventional cooking methods don't work when ingredients are frozen solid and outside temperatures can freeze boiling water in seconds. They use pressure cookers and specialized heating systems that work in extreme cold. Even opening a can becomes a challenge because metal becomes brittle, and can openers can shatter. Chocolate becomes a legitimate survival tool, not a treat. High-quality dark chocolate provides quick-release sugars for immediate energy, plus fats for sustained fuel. But it's not just any chocolate. It needs to be specially formulated to remain edible at extreme temperatures. Regular chocolate becomes so hard you could use it as a hammer, so Antarctic chocolate contains special additives that prevent it from becoming an inedible brick. Hydration becomes a mathematical equation. Your body needs 3 to 4 liters of water per day, but water freezes at 0 degrees, and we're dealing with temperatures 30 degrees Celsius below that. So they don't drink water. They drink hot liquids constantly. Coffee, tea, soup, hot chocolate, anything that provides hydration and heat. Some people consume up to 12 cups of hot liquids per day just to maintain proper hydration and body temperature. But here's something that sounds crazy. They actually need to limit caffeine intake. Why? Because caffeine constricts blood vessels, reducing blood flow to extremities, which increases frostbite risk. So that morning coffee that keeps you alive under normal conditions can literally cost you fingers and toes in Antarctica. Alcohol is completely banned from fieldwork, and not just for safety reasons. Alcohol creates a false sense of warmth by dilating blood vessels near the skin, which actually increases heat loss and accelerates hypothermia. Plus, alcohol impairs judgment, and in Antarctica, one wrong decision equals death. That old myth about rescue dogs carrying brandy? That would actually kill you faster. Meal timing becomes crucial survival strategy. They eat small amounts constantly rather than 3 big meals because digestion generates heat through a process called thermogenesis. Your body burns calories just to digest food, so frequent small meals keep your internal furnace burning consistently. It's like adding logs to a fire. You need to feed it continuously to maintain heat. Food preparation requires military-level logistics. Everything needs to be calculated in advance. Caloric density, prep time, fuel requirements for cooking, and storage space. A single miscalculation can mean the difference between having enough energy to survive and becoming a statistic. They use specialized meal planning software that calculates nutritional requirements based on outside temperature, activity level, and exposure duration. Emergency food becomes science. Everyone carries high-calorie emergency rations capable of sustaining life for 72 hours without cooking. These aren't your typical energy bars. We're talking about concentrated nutrition that provides maximum calories in minimum space. Some emergency rations contain 200 calories in a package the size of a chocolate bar. The psychological aspect of eating in Antarctica is brutal. Food becomes purely functional rather than enjoyable. Everything tastes different because extreme cold affects taste buds, and survival stress makes eating feel like a chore instead of pleasure. People develop weird cravings for fresh foods they can't have, and some report dreaming about eating salads or fresh fruit. Vitamin deficiency becomes a real concern because fresh produce is impossible to maintain. They rely heavily on vitamin C and D supplements, plus B-complex vitamins that aid metabolism. Scurvy, a disease we associate with 18th century pirates, can become an issue in modern Antarctica if vitamin C intake isn't carefully monitored. The most counterintuitive part? Sometimes you need to force yourself to eat even when not hungry, because extreme cold suppresses appetite while simultaneously increasing caloric need. Your body's hunger signals get confused by survival stress, so eating becomes a disciplined survival behavior rather than a natural response to hunger. Special foods are designed specifically for extreme conditions. Energy gels that don't freeze, protein bars with special fats that remain edible at 40-degree rigs, and electrolyte drinks with formulations designed for cold weather hydration needs. These aren't available in regular stores. They're specialized survival foods that cost more per gram than caviar. but can literally save your life. When it comes to construction in Antarctica, we're not talking about building houses. We're talking about designing survival capsules capable of withstanding conditions that would destroy most military bunkers. These structures need to handle winds that regularly exceed 160 km/h, temperatures that would freeze steel, and snow loads that could crush a regular building like an aluminum can. This isn't construction, it's architectural warfare against nature itself. Every building in Antarctica is elevated off the ground, and this isn't a design preference, it's pure survival engineering. If you build directly on snow, here's what happens. Heat from the building melts the snow underneath, creating a layer of water that then refreezes into solid ice. This creates an unstable foundation that shifts and moves, eventually causing structural collapse. But more importantly, if your building is on the snow, wind-driven snow, called drift, will literally bury your entire structure in less than a week. We're talking about snow accumulation rates that would boggle your mind. In some areas of Antarctica, snow can accumulate at rates of 90, 120 centimeters per day during storms. Imagine going to sleep in a building and waking up completely buried. That's not a nightmare. That's Tuesday in Antarctica if you don't elevate your structures properly. The elevation systems are engineering marvels by themselves. Buildings are mounted on adjustable steel tower systems that can be raised as snow accumulates around them. These aren't just simple poles stuck in the ground. They're sophisticated foundation systems that can be hydraulically adjusted to maintain proper building height. Some research stations have buildings that have been raised 4.56 meters over decades, as snow levels permanently increased around them. Now let's talk insulation, because this is where things get absolutely insane. Antarctic building walls aren't just insulated, they're over-engineered to the point of making luxury home builders weep. We're talking about insulation systems that are sometimes 60 centimeters thick. That means 60 centimeters of insulation covering every surface. To put this in perspective, most American homes use 15 centimeter insulation, which is considered adequate for normal climates. But it's not just thickness, it's the type of insulation. They use specialized foam insulation that maintains its insulating properties at extreme temperatures, because conventional insulation can become less effective or completely useless when temperatures drop below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Some systems use vacuum-insulated panels, the same technology used in spacesuits, that provide incredible thermal resistance in minimal space. Windows are technological masterpieces that cost more than most people's cars. We're not talking about double-paned windows. We're talking about triple, sometimes quadruple-pane systems with special gas fills between layers. Argon gas is commonly used because it has better insulating properties than regular air, but some cutting-edge installations use krypton gas, which offers even better thermal performance but costs a fortune. The glass itself is specially treated low-emissivity glass that reflects heat back into the building while blocking harmful UV radiation. Remember, in Antarctica, you're dealing with intense UV reflection from snow, which can be stronger than tropical sunlight. These windows need to handle temperature differences of more than 38 degrees. It might be 24 degrees inside and 10 degrees outside, and the glass needs to handle that stress without cracking or losing seal integrity. Heating systems are redundant beyond anything you'd see in regular construction. Every building has multiple independent heating systems because if heating fails in Antarctica, everyone inside dies. Period. They use diesel heating systems, electric backup systems, and sometimes even wood stoves as tertiary backups. The fuel systems themselves represent an engineering challenge because diesel starts to gel at extremely low temperatures, so they use special additives and heated fuel lines. But here's where it gets really impressive. They build entire systems of underground tunnels connecting buildings. When outside conditions become too dangerous for human travel, which happens frequently, people need to move between buildings safely. These tunnels are heated, insulated, and equipped with emergency supplies. Some research stations have tunnel networks extending hundreds of meters, creating underground cities that allow normal operations even when the surface is completely uninhabitable. Tunnel construction is incredibly sophisticated. They're not just digging holes in snow. They're creating engineered spaces with proper ventilation, lighting, and structural support. The tunnels need to handle the weight of accumulated snow above them, deal with ground movement from freeze-thaw cycles, and maintain structural integrity for decades. Ventilation systems are counterintuitive engineering puzzles. You need fresh air exchange to prevent carbon dioxide buildup and control humidity. But every time you bring in outside air, you're bringing in air that's potentially 120 degrees colder than inside air. So they use heat recovery ventilation systems that are essentially heat exchangers for buildings. Warm outgoing air passes through a heat exchanger that warms incoming cold air, recovering up to 85% of heat that would otherwise be lost. Emergency systems are built into every aspect of construction. Every building has emergency power generators, emergency heating systems, emergency water and food supplies, and emergency communication equipment. But the real genius is in redundancy. If one system fails, there are always backup systems and backup systems for the backup systems. The most impressive structures are elevated research stations that look like they're from a science fiction movie. These buildings are mounted on enormous hydraulic leg systems that can be adjusted, not just for snow accumulation, but to level the building as the ice sheet shifts underneath. Some of these stations can literally walk to new locations using their hydraulic leg systems when snow accumulation or ice movement makes their current position unsustainable. Materials science becomes crucial because regular construction materials become useless in extreme cold. Steel becomes brittle and can shatter. Concrete doesn't cure properly and cracks and crumbles. So they use specialized materials. Aluminum alloys that maintain strength at low temperatures, composite materials that don't expand and contract with temperature changes, and specialized sealants that remain flexible even when frozen. Door and window seals become life-or-death engineering challenges. A single air leak can create ice buildup that compromises the entire thermal envelope of the building. They use multiple sealing systems, primary seals, secondary seals, and sometimes tertiary sealing systems. The entry systems themselves are often airlocks with heated vestibules to prevent cold air infiltration when people enter and exit. The most impressive aspect is that some of these buildings are designed to be completely buried by snow and continue operating as underground facilities. They're built with structural systems capable of handling millions of pounds of snow while maintaining habitable interior spaces. It's like designing buildings to survive being buried alive while keeping everyone inside comfortable and safe. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. And this is where everything we've talked about comes together in a way that will fundamentally change how you view human potential. These people living in Antarctica, surviving conditions that should kill them within hours, aren't superhuman. They're not genetically modified winter warriors or specially evolved ice people. They're ordinary people, scientists from Ohio, engineers from Texas, cooks from California, who figured out something most of us never even consider. They learned to work with the environment instead of fighting against it. Think about how we normally approach problems in America. When it's hot, we crank the AC to maximum. When it's cold, we blast the heat. When there's an obstacle, we bulldoze through it or go around it. We solve problems with brute force and technology. But in Antarctica, this approach will kill you faster than you can say American ingenuity. The environment is so hostile, so overwhelmingly powerful, that trying to dominate it is like trying to stop a hurricane with a leaf blower. So these survivors did something revolutionary. They stopped fighting Antarctica and started learning from it. They realized that Inuit people had lived in similar conditions for thousands of years, not by conquering the cold, but by becoming part of it. They studied how Arctic animals survive, how ice and snow behave, how wind patterns work, and then they created human solutions based on nature's own survival strategies. This is where it gets absolutely unbelievable. They use snow as insulation. Snow, the very thing that's trying to bury them and kill them, becomes their ally. Fresh snow is actually incredible insulation because it's mostly trapped air, and air is one of Earth's best insulators. So instead of constantly clearing snow from their structures, they strategically build snow walls and berms that create thermal barriers and windbreaks. They're essentially building fortresses with the weapon that's attacking them. They collect ice, tons and tons of ice, and turn it into their water supply. But not just any ice. They learned to identify different types of ice because not all ice is created equal. Some ice contains salt that makes it undrinkable. Other ice is so hard it's nearly impossible to melt efficiently. But they figured out how to find and collect the right kind of ice and then melt it, using systems that capture and reuse thermal energy, creating closed-loop water production systems that would make NASA engineers jealous. Underground greenhouse systems are where human ingenuity reaches science fiction levels. Picture this. Outside, it's 15 degrees C with 190 km/h winds that could literally sandblast your skin off. Underground, they're growing tomatoes, lettuce, and fresh herbs using geothermal heating, artificial lighting systems, and hydroponic technology. They created tropical microclimates in Earth's most hostile environment. Fresh salads growing while the surface tries to freeze everything solid. It's like having a secret garden in hell. But here's the most amazing part. They turned Antarctica's 24-hour darkness and 24-hour daylight cycles from obstacles into advantages. During months of constant sunlight, they use solar collection systems and work extended schedules to accomplish massive projects. During months of constant darkness, they use the stable temperatures for certain types of research and focus on indoor activities and maintenance. They learn to work with circadian rhythms that would drive most people insane, turning what should be a psychological nightmare into a productive cycle. The social engineering is as impressive as the physical engineering. These communities develop social structures and support systems that keep people mentally healthy under conditions that would normally cause severe depression and social isolation. They create entertainment systems, exercise programs, and communication networks that maintain morale and mental health during months of isolation. They basically figured out how to build functioning societies under conditions where most people would lose their minds within weeks. Here's something that will give you chills. Literally, they developed emergency protocols that can keep people alive for days or even weeks when everything goes wrong. When buildings lose heat, when food supplies run out, when communication systems fail, they have backup plans for their backup plans. But the real genius is in survival psychology. They trained themselves to stay calm and think clearly when most people would panic and die. The most incredible breakthrough is in energy management, not just fuel and electricity, but human energy. They figured out how to optimize human metabolism, work schedules, and activity patterns to maximize survival efficiency. They know exactly when to work, when to rest, when to eat, and when to conserve energy. It's like they turned human biology into a precision instrument calibrated for survival. But here's the ultimate twist. The techniques they developed in Antarctica are starting to revolutionize how we think about survival in other extreme environments. Desert survival, high-altitude survival, disaster preparedness. The lessons learned in Antarctica are being applied worldwide because the fundamental principle is the same. Stop fighting the environment and start working with it. They prove something that challenges our entire American mindset about conquering nature. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about dominating the environment. It's about understanding it so completely that you become part of it. These Antarctic survivors achieved something that seems impossible. They made one of Earth's most hostile environments livable not through brute force, but through intelligence, adaptation, and respect for the natural world. The real breakthrough isn't in their equipment, their buildings, or their food systems, though all of those are amazing. The real breakthrough is in their mindset. They cracked the code of human adaptability in ways that prove we're capable of so much more than we ever imagined. They're living proof that humans can survive literally anywhere if we're smart enough to work with nature instead of against it. And that changes everything we thought we knew about the limits of human survival. So here we are, at the end of this journey into the frozen heart of human survival, and I want you to really think about what we've just discovered together. While you're sitting in your heated home, complaining about a 10-degree-less day, or turning up the thermostat when it hits 4 degrees ice, there are people right now, at this exact moment, living and thriving in temperatures that are literally 41 degrees colder than that. They're not just surviving. They're conducting groundbreaking scientific research, building communities, falling in love, celebrating birthdays, and living full human lives under conditions that would kill most of us before we could even figure out how to zip our coats properly. But here's what really gets me, and what should blow your mind. The difference between them and us isn't some magical superpower or genetic mutation. It's not that they're built differently or that they're somehow less human than we are. The difference is knowledge, preparation, and, this is the key point, a fundamental shift in how they think about their relationship with the environment around them. See, most of us live our entire lives in this climate-controlled bubble. We go from our heated homes to our heated cars to our heated offices and back again. We've become so disconnected from the natural world that we think 15 degrees C is cold and 27 degrees C is hot. Meanwhile, these Antarctic survivors learn to read the environment like a language, to work with natural forces that could crush us, and to find opportunity in conditions that look like certain death to the rest of us. Think about that for a second. We live in a country where people panic buy bread and milk when the weather forecast calls for 5 centimeters of snow. We shut down entire cities when temperatures drop below freezing. We consider ourselves tough because we can camp in 4-degree AC weather. But these people are out there building civilizations, conducting experiments that advance human knowledge, and creating communities in an environment that makes our worst winter storm look like a pleasant spring day. And here's the part that should keep you up tonight. Everything they learned about survival, adaptation, and working with hostile environments doesn't just apply to Antarctica. These lessons about resource management, emergency preparedness, community building, psychological resilience, and environmental adaptation are skills that could save your life in any emergency situation. Hurricane, earthquake, power grid failure, economic collapse. The principles are the same. The people who thrive aren't those with the most stuff or the biggest trucks. They're the ones who understand how to adapt, how to work with the environment instead of against it, and how to stay calm and think clearly when everything goes wrong. But let's zoom out even further, because this story isn't really about Antarctica. It's about human potential. It's about what we're actually capable of when we stop making excuses and start finding solutions. These Antarctic survivors proved that the limits we think exist are largely in our heads. They showed that humans can adapt to literally anything, and I mean anything, if we're willing to learn, prepare, and change our approach. Every single day, they redefine what's possible. They grow food in frozen wastelands. They build structures capable of withstanding forces that would level a skyscraper. They create power systems, water systems, and social systems that work perfectly under conditions where most technology simply stops functioning. They're living proof that human ingenuity isn't just about creating new gadgets or apps. It's about solving the fundamental challenge of staying alive and thriving in a world that doesn't care whether we make it or not. And here's what really gets me. They're doing all of this while advancing human knowledge. The research being conducted in Antarctica right now is helping us understand climate change, develop new medical treatments, discover new species, and even prepare for space exploration. They're not just survival experts. They're pioneers who expand the boundaries of human knowledge, while simultaneously expanding the boundaries of human survival. So the next time you think something is impossible, remember the people who lived at 56-degree temperatures and figured out how to grow tomatoes underground. The next time you think you can't adapt to change, remember the communities that thrived through 24 hours of darkness followed by 24 hours of daylight. The next time you think humans are weak or helpless in the face of nature, remember the people who transformed Earth's most hostile environment into a place where they can live, work, love, and build the future. But here's my challenge to you, and this is where theory meets reality. What seemingly impossible challenges in your life have you been fighting instead of learning to work with? What environments, physical, professional, personal, have you been trying to dominate instead of understand? What would happen if you stopped trying to control everything around you and started learning to adapt and thrive in the conditions you actually face? Because at the end of the day, that's what these Antarctic survivors really teach us. It's not about the equipment, the techniques, or the buildings, though all of that is incredibly impressive. It's about the mindset. It's about looking at impossible conditions and saying, okay, this is what I'm working with. How can I not just survive this, but build something incredible within these constraints? That's the real lesson from the bottom of the world. That's the message from people who live where life shouldn't be possible. They're not just surviving in Antarctica. They're proving that humans can survive and thrive anywhere, under any conditions, if we're smart enough to work with the world instead of against it. And that changes everything about what we think is possible. So, which of these techniques impressed you the most? Tell us in the comments what's the coldest temperature you've ever faced. If you want more content about extreme survival and amazing facts, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Thanks everyone, and go have a hot chocolate for me.